So I was watching a podcast with James Gunn recently, and he said something about the creative process that I thought put into words better than I've ever heard before, something I've been thinking about for a while. He was talking about writing, right? Obviously, James Gunn writes movies, ones that do really, really well. And he was saying he's never experienced writer's block, right? He was talking about writer's block. He's saying, I've never experienced it, but I've experienced difficulty to produce something good. You know, not writer's block in terms of he's like, I just can't sit down and write. Not in that regard, no. But in the idea of I can't get the words out to do what I want to do right now, right? A little bit more of a complicated feeling, I suppose, than the traditional writer's block is. There's yellow paint all over these brushes. We're just gonna go with that. We're gonna see what happens to my hands by the end of this. I don't think it'll be good. In his saying, he's never experienced it, he did emphasize that he's, though, felt a difficulty to write because he was always trying to write something good, right? It's a very weird thing, right? Of course you're trying to write something good. If, you know, you're making movies that are grossing like $1 billion or whatever they do, and like, of course, why would you try to write something bad? And, you know, I thought it was kind of a weird phrasing when I first heard it. I was like, all right, like, you know, this guy's just saying words. He's doing what I do on my show. He's just saying a bunch of shit, hoping it sticks. But the more I thought about it, I was like, wait, that actually makes a lot of sense, right? Because I think all of us, whether you're an artist, whether you're just a person, we all have kind of two sides of our brain, right? The one that just like wants to do, and the other that's super analytical and like kind of just like your worst enemy, like a huge critic of yourself. I think we all have this to some degree. Some people more than others, of course. But I mean, you know, have you ever like done something and then been sitting up in your bed like a month later, like, oh my God, I sound like an idiot in that conversation. I think even something like that is an example of those two sides of ourselves sort of conflicting, right? You have the one side that's just doing, being natural, and the other side that's thinking back, doing like an employee review of how you did in the conversation. It's ridiculous, really. And I think we can also all relate to the idea that if you were always working with the side of your brain that's sitting in your bed at 3 a.m., laying up thinking about how embarrassing you are, if that was the side of your brain in control all the time, you would never speak to anyone. You would never get anything done. You know, oh, should I go tell that guy his shirt's cool? No, I'd sound like an idiot. You know, you would never move. You would never do anything. And I think your life would be worse for it. So as much as that side of our brain's great at critiquing the other, it's never, you know, it's still always sitting there like you would never get anything done yourself if you were in my shoes, if you were the guy walking around. Kind of a weird example, but I think it actually illustrates really well the same process that happens when you create art, let's say, right? When you create art, we obviously all have this idea in our head of what good art looks like. What does it mean to make like a painting that's a Picasso versus a little doodle on your napkin? Like, we all have this idea of like, there's good art and then there's bad art and there's art that's in between. If that's the side of your brain that's creating, you're trying to calculate how to make good art. You're trying to figure out, okay, is this good? Should I make it better here? And you're never gonna get anything out. You're never gonna produce good art by calculating it. Just like you're never gonna have a good interaction by calculating. You know, like the archetype of guy we've all seen, especially lately, this guy's everywhere, unfortunately, who reads like a book, like How to Win Friends and Influence People, and they go around repeating everyone's name to them way too much. Go, no, tell me about yourself, because they heard that interesting people are interested people. You know, like, we know this type of guy. And how they just, like, most of the time, you know, never have great social interactions. I don't mean to shit on these books. You know, these books can be good if you are somebody that struggles socially. They do work to an extent. But like, that guy who like follows it way too hard, who's looking at his social interactions, like rubrics from Dale Carnegie he has to check off. You know, this guy's never having good conversations. We've never seen this guy and been like, man, like that's the pillar of social interaction right there. Because that's not how things work. It's not a rubric. It's all about it's about being free. It's about doing things that way. Art is the same way. If there was a rubric to good art, then everybody would be making Picassos right now. Like, everybody would just sit down and maybe you had to get your skills in order. Maybe you got to spend like a year developing some things. But after that, just you're making masterpieces for the rest of your life. If there was this rubric here, there's not though. There's not a rubric. That's what makes art so cool, that there's not a rubric. So the only way, as James Gunn says, he follows up, he finishes his little thing here, as he finishes his little point, he goes, Actually, not Widow Point. I don't know why I was saying Widow Point. That's demeaning to Mr. Gunn. I love Peacemaker. It's amazing. It's the best. It's the best thing I've ever watched. Actually, I can't wait for episode 6. I'm on the edge of my seat. But I'm dating this episode now. This is terrible. The way he finished out his point is he goes, the point is not to try and make good writing. The point is to just write and see what comes out. Obviously, we're all going to ask the question now, similar to how we might even do with our social interaction on a day-to-day basis. Okay, well, if there's no, if the point is just to write, if the point is just to go up and talk to people, then what does it mean to have a good interaction? What does it mean to write something good? I don't think the answer, I genuinely don't think the answer exists. Like, I also think that to sit and, end this by spending 10 minutes philosophizing about, okay, we've covered the fact that there's no such thing as good social interaction or good writing. Now let's cover what we think makes good social interaction or good writing. I think that'd be super antithetical to this whole process we've taken this episode. But if I were to say something, if I were to give an answer that I think is as productive as the point James Gunn makes here, I do think that repetition is. I think consistency is. I think that honing a skill, whether that be, I don't know why we ended up doing these dual little things here of social interaction and writing, but whether that be getting better at speaking to people by cold approaching people every day, or whether that be getting better at writing through writing every day. I think either of these two things are what lead to actual quality work, not rubrics. And that is, the way that I think that constant practice of freedom is the only way to actually get to good stuff. This is the painting. Nothing to say. Getting a little bored with form here. I don't know. I want to switch it up. But I also just think I need to maybe make more interesting forms and cubes, spheres, and triangles. But check it out over the Instagram, the TikTok. And until next time, guys, gals, and pals, my name is Max Ice. This is Paint Talk episode 265. I'm here every evening, painting and talking with you all.